A man's scream had echoed from the gully just before sundown, but by the time Thatcher Rook rode through, there was only silence, and the flies hadn't gathered yet. He didn't stop for the blood. He didn't slow for the tracks. He saw the glint of rusted wire across the fence line first, and then he saw them, two women tied there like discarded animals. Alive. Barely. One knelt. The other slumped against the post, head low, wrists bound above her shoulders. Their dresses were ripped but not torn by wind, by hands. Their skin dark, streaked with dried sweat and rope burn. They didn't scream, didn't beg, just stared back at him like judgment. Thatcher dismounted without a word. The younger one, she looked no more than 20, watched him with steady defiance, her jaw locked tight. Her left eye was swollen. A welt crossed her collarbone like someone had tried to brand her with a branch. The older one sat straighter, but her face was unreadable. Maybe mid-30s. Still proud, even with the shame dripping off her like sweat. She didn't blink. Didn't ask who he was. Only said, "You part of them?" "No," Thatcher replied, his voice low and clean as snowmelt. His boots sank slightly into the dust as he stepped closer. The silence around them stretched, thick as gun oil. Prairie stretched flat behind them, wheat-colored and empty. No town folk in sight. Just buzzards circling wide over the ridge. "You come to help?" the younger asked. He didn't answer. Just pulled a knife from his belt, slowly, visibly, and stepped to her first. She flinched, not from the blade, but from the nearness. Her hands trembled as he sliced the rope clean. When her arms fell, she hissed softly and curled them toward her chest like a broken bird. "Don't touch me," she muttered, but he already moved to the older one. Her name would come later. Names always came later with people who'd been left to die. The rope binding her wrists was older, frayed, tied tighter. She'd been there longer. Thatcher paused. "You're bleedin' from the palms," he said quietly. "Then hurry." He did. Once freed, the woman didn't collapse. She didn't move. She sat there on her knees, her arms dropping like they didn't belong to her anymore, staring into the lowering sun. "They left us this morning," she said. "Who?" Thatcher asked. She didn't reply, but the younger one did. His kin. Horace Dunn's bastards. Said now that he's gone, we ain't wives. We're property. They were arguing 'bout who'd get to trade us to the blacksmith. Or the preacher. Her voice was flat, words clipped with fury and exhaustion. Thatcher looked up the trail. The sun had dipped behind the hills now. Long shadows crept from the sagebrush like fingers. No wagon tracks, but hoofprints. 4 riders, maybe 5. Headed west. "How long since you ate?" "Since yesterday." He offered water first. The younger one grabbed it fast, drank like she'd done it before. Fast, measured, no waste. The older took hers with both hands but didn't lift it. Just held it in her lap and stared at the dirt. He watched the road again. The fence. The blood pooled behind them, likely from the man whose scream he'd heard. It hadn't come from these two. That meant someone else had tried to interfere. "They'll be back," he said. "Good," the younger snapped. "I got words I didn't get to say." Thatcher didn't smile, but something in his face softened. Maybe recognition. Maybe just the echo of a younger man he barely remembered. He turned toward his horse. "We ain't going back," the older one said suddenly. "Didn't say you were," he replied. "You taking us somewhere?" the younger asked. He adjusted the rifle on his back. "There's a cabin east of here. Half-day's ride. Mine." Silence. Then the older one stood. A little shaky, but she stood. She brushed the dust off her dress with her palms, though it only smeared the blood. "You gonna ask our names?" she asked. "No." "Why not?" "Don't want to speak 'em wrong." That seemed to satisfy her, though he couldn't tell why. They rode in silence. The women shared the saddle on his old pack-horse. Swayed together, not speaking, not sleeping. Thatcher led the way on foot, the reins looped in one hand, rifle still slung, eyes on the ridges. The prairie was quiet, but too quiet for dusk. Coyotes hadn't sung. Birds had gone still. That meant eyes were watching somewhere. As night came, the wind finally rose. Not with howls. With weight. As if carrying the stench of wrongness across the land. Thatcher lit no fire when they stopped. He unrolled a blanket beneath the trees and offered the women dried beef. The younger ate. The older did not. "Why'd you help us?" she asked after a long while. Thatcher stared into the dark. "Because I heard a scream. You could have kept riding." "I did." Then turned back. "What changed?" He didn't answer. The younger one tossed the beef aside and stood. "You afraid of what they'll say?" "The town." "I don't live in town. That doesn't stop their mouths." He looked up at her finally. "You think I care what cowards say about two women tied to a fence?" That shut her up, but not her anger. "You rich?" she asked. "Enough." "You married?" "No." She studied him like he was a fence post she might still burn down. "Then you must be lonely," she said. His mouth twitched, but he didn't speak. And when she laid down on the far side of the fireless pit, her back to him, he didn't move either. The older one watched him a moment longer, then murmured, "We don't need saving, mister." "I ain't here to save you," he said. "What then?" He looked up at the sky, where clouds had begun to roll across the stars like bruises spreading. "Maybe I just don't want to leave anyone where I once was." No one replied. But the wind finally began to howl. The cabin sat wide and quiet beneath a sky gone colorless with snow cloud. Thatcher opened the door without looking back, leaving it wide for the women to enter or not. He didn't speak. Neither did they. Inside, the place was too tidy for comfort. A man's house with no life in it, tools lined like soldiers on the wall, boots by the hearth as if waiting for a ghost to wear them. No photographs. No lace. Just firewood stacked with precision and a single iron bed draped in wool. Mavis, though she hadn't yet told him her name, crossed the threshold first. She paused like she was walking into someone else's memory. The younger one, Sula, followed but stayed close to the door. Thatcher crouched to light the hearth, sparks blooming with slow reluctance. "You keep your fire cold on purpose?" Sula asked. "Fire don't keep when there's no one to warm." She narrowed her eyes, catching the weight behind the words. "That's supposed to sound poetic?" "No," he said. "It's just true." He handed her a bundle of dry socks, then passed Mavis a chipped tin cup filled with rainwater warmed on the stove. She accepted it, steady, graceful even in her fatigue. Her wrists still bore the grooves of rope, and her right shoulder drooped slightly, dislocated, maybe. She hadn't said a word about it. "You got a doctor near?" Thatcher asked. "There was one," Mavis said. "He ran off when the railroad brought cholera last spring." "I can set it back in place," Thatcher offered. "If you'll let me." She nodded once, her face unreadable. He came near with slow hands, laying out a strip of leather for her to bite. She didn't use it. When he pulled her arm forward and twisted, the crack echoed off log walls. Mavis grunted but did not scream. Sula flinched beside the fire, watching like a cornered fox. "Who taught you how to do that?" she asked. "My brother dislocated things often." "You the younger?" Thatcher didn't look at her. "No." Later, as the wind gnawed at the shutters, the women sat wrapped in wool on opposite sides of the hearth. Mavis stitched a tear in her hem with thread pulled from the cabin's wall hook. Sula watched her fingers move but didn't offer to help. "You his favorite?" Sula asked her suddenly. Mavis didn't look up. "Don't start. He left the cabin to you, didn't he?" "He died coughing black blood. Left us nothing but trouble." "That don't mean you weren't his favorite." Mavis paused, needle frozen in air. "I was the first." Sula smiled without humor. "That's not the same." Thatcher, polishing his rifle in the corner, spoke without raising his eyes. You two plan to fight every night? Sula snapped back. You got a rule against women talking? I got a rule against tearing each other apart while someone else sharpens knives in the dark. Silence fell thick. He rose and pulled a curtain across the far wall, revealing a cot made of pine and rope. Laid fresh linens on it. You take the bed, he said to Mavis. I'm not infirm, she answered. You're hurt. She stood and walked to the cot, stiff but proud. Sula stayed where she was, arms wrapped around her knees. You expecting us to stay? She asked. I'm expecting you to rest. Then what? He met her eyes. Then we see if the world leaves you alone. They won't. I know. The next morning, snow had begun to fall, light, delicate, like the sky hadn't made up its mind. Thatcher saddled his horse for town, leaving a rifle by the door. Bolt stiff, he said. If you need it, jam down hard. Neither woman asked what for. When he returned at dusk, he found a message nailed to his fence. A square of yellowed parchment with words inked in too careful handwriting. Horace's widows belong in town, not in a rich man's bed. Below the note, a carving of a noose. And a dog's skull, fresh. Thatcher burned it in the hearth without comment. But Sula saw the way his jaw stayed tight. You got enemies? She asked. He shrugged. I got land. Same thing, then. Later, Mavis helped him cut wood, though her arm still ached. She didn't complain. Just paused once to say, I heard about you. Years ago. You were the one who buried his brother behind the church, but didn't mark the grave. Thatcher froze. Axe halfway down. You hear who I buried? No. Just that it split the town. He resumed the motion. Clean, heavy, final. He deserved the dirt. Didn't deserve the stone. Mavis held his gaze. Then why bury him at all? Because someone had to. Inside, Sula sorted dried beans into two piles, red and not red. She wasn't hungry. Just restless. Her eyes kept flicking to the window. You think they'll come tonight? She asked Mavis after supper. No. Why not? Because cowards wait for snow. But they both knew that wasn't comfort. Just fact. That night, just after midnight, a branch snapped outside. Loud. Deliberate. Thatcher was up before the echo died, rifle in hand. Mavis stepped back into the shadows. Sula grabbed the fire poker and moved to the far wall, just beside the window. Heart racing, breath slow. A rock hit the glass, didn't break it. Just thunked hard and dropped. Thatcher flung the door open. Empty yard. No wind. No sound. Then he saw it, at the edge of the tree-line. A figure on horseback, unmoving, black coat like a blot in the snow. He didn't follow. Just stared. And the man turned, slowly, and rode off without a word. When he came back inside, Sula's arms were tight across her chest. What did he look like? Didn't see the face. But you knew him? Didn't have to, Thatcher said. That kind of man don't show up to warn. She stepped closer. So what now? Thatcher's voice was dry as gunpowder. Now we wait for the snow to stop pretending to be soft. By dawn, the snow had fallen thick and silent, coating the world in a white hush, but it didn't fool anyone inside the cabin. The air held its breath. The fire burned low. No one slept. Thatcher sat at the table, cleaning the same pistol for the third time, though it hadn't been fired in years. His movements were slow, deliberate. Not from fear. From memory. Mavis stood near the stove, twisting a rag in her hands. Her arm had healed enough to move freely, but something deeper hadn't. She stared into the flames like they owed her an answer. Sula leaned in the doorway, coat pulled tight, boots laced to run or fight. Her fingers tapped the frame in rhythm with her thoughts. Fast, erratic, angry. He's not gonna stop, she said. That one in the trees. No, Thatcher said. You know who he is? He looked up. Dunn's cousin. The preacher's boy. Used to beat horses for flinching. That one. Sula's mouth curled. He's worse than done. Mavis spoke softly. He's not alone. They all knew it. Outside, the snow had softened every sound but hadn't hidden the tracks. 4 riders. 2 with rifles. 1 with a grudge. 1 with a preacher's collar and blood under his nails. Thatcher stood. Buckled his gun belt. Set down the coffee untouched. You have until midday, he said to them. Once the sun breaks cloud, they'll come. Mavis stepped forward. You mean to fight them? Mean to hold 'em off. You'll die. He looked at her gently, almost like an apology. Maybe. Sula snapped. That's it? Just go down like some tragic cowboy in a pulp novel. He looked at her, but didn't answer right away. Then, with quiet finality, they're not after me. They're after what they think they still own. Her eyes didn't soften. You're not responsible for us. No, he said. But I'm tired of watching people pay for other men's sins. Sula turned and walked to the far corner, where a hunting rifle rested unused. She checked the chamber, cocked it, and threw a glance at Mavis. Well, Mavis didn't move. I've seen enough men die to know when the cause is lost. So you'll hide? No, Mavis said, walking toward the door and picking up a splitting axe. I'll just wait until it's worth swinging. By midday, the sun cracked through the clouds in cold gold light. The riders came. They didn't announce themselves. Didn't hoot or threaten or offer any chance to talk. They rode quiet, rifles slung, eyes dark under wide brims. They looked like lawmen from a distance, but up close, they smelled of sweat and ashes. The leader dismounted first. Reverend Cyrus Dunn, cousin of Horace, preacher of a crooked church. He stepped forward, arms wide like offering peace. We came to reclaim what's ours, he said, voice sugar-slick. Thatcher stepped out onto the porch. The rifle rested against the doorframe, untouched. They're not yours, he said. Cyrus smiled. The law says otherwise. Which law? The one that remembers bloodlines. Thatcher took one step down from the porch. You're standing on my land. My fire's behind me. You walk past this line, and you better be ready to burn. One of the riders reached for his holster. Sula fired from the loft window. The bullet hit the man's hand, not fatal, but enough to end his career. Everything snapped. Gunfire cracked like thunder over snow. Thatcher dove behind the water trough. Mavis dragged the spare rifle to the back of the cabin, covering the rear. Sula chambered another round, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. Cyrus didn't flinch. He moved slow, walking toward the house with holy fury in his spine. You'll regret this, he shouted. You'll be judged for harboring sinners. Thatcher fired once. The bullet grazed the man's collar. Then I'll take that judgment myself. 2 men tried to flank the house. Mavis caught them, one in the leg, the other in the shoulder. She hadn't fired a gun in years, but her hands remembered. The snow turned pink in patches. One rider was still. One crawled. Sula stopped shooting. Her hand was bleeding. Splintered glass had cut her palm when a bullet struck near the window. She wrapped it tight in a strip of shirt, eyes never leaving the clearing. Cyrus stood alone now. Hat gone. Face flushed. I'll bring 10 more next time, he spat. There won't be a next time, Thatcher said. He lowered the rifle. Stepped off the porch, slow. Unarmed. Cyrus lifted his weapon. Smirked. You gonna try preachin' me down? No. Thatcher kept walking. Until he stood 10 feet away. Then 5. You kill me, Cyrus said. They'll call you a kidnapper and a traitor. You walk away, Thatcher replied, and no one will remember your name. Cyrus lifted the gun. Sula screamed, Down. Too late. The shot rang out, louder than it should have been. But it wasn't Cyrus's finger that pulled the trigger. It was Mavis. From the side. Her axe forgotten in the snow, the pistol she'd taken from the drawer resting in both hands. Cyrus crumpled without grace. The clearing fell silent. The wind returned. Later, after bandages and bitter tea, Sula leaned beside the hearth, her injured hand resting in her lap. "You gonna bury him?" she asked Thatcher. "No," he said. "Let the snow do what it's good at." Mavis was quiet for a long while. Then, "You still don't want our names?" Thatcher looked at both women. Firelight in his eyes. "No. I want what comes after them." They said nothing. But when he handed Mavis the deed to half the land 2 days later, she didn't refuse it. And when Sula walked beside him, boots crunching frost, she didn't look back. Because sometimes love is not a promise or a kiss. Sometimes it's just the fire that stayed lit when everything else went cold. Which city are you watching our video from? Please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you.